You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And as I do each and every show, I thank all of you. Our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's because of all of you. We've grown our listeners organically because you are sharing particular podcasts or our entire show with family and friends. And I thank you for that. Many of you listen to the show on your favorite podcast station, Apple Podcasts, Google, Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're on them all. So thank you for all your support. And I know why you're sharing our shows with friends and families, because we just have wonderful, wonderful guests. And I'm not going to disappoint you today. We have with us Rachel Francine, with over 15 years experience building startups. Rachel has led teams and strategy for recognized leaders in technology and media, including CitySearch, Ticketmaster, and Current TV. Rachel earned her master's degree in long-term strategic planning in order to build profitable businesses that also does immense good. In 2012, Rachel co-founded Musical Health Technologies, whose debut product, SingFit PRIME, mass distributes music as medicine for the first time in history. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's great to be here. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody who's listening.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff. Certainly right up the line of the type of work I do too. So, you know, I have a lot of questions for you as it relates to the science behind, music. But maybe before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about SingFit. Exactly, kind of give us an overview of what it's all about.
Sure. Well, thanks for the question. My background is technology. One of my little jokes is I've been working in tech so long. The platform debate was VHS versus beta when I started. And so I've been doing technology for about 30 years. And what I've always focused on is how do you take something brick and mortar and digitize and scale it out? And one of the things that really needed help scaling was music therapy, because over the years what we found is that using music as medicine can really apply to help to treat a variety of healthcare challenges, everything really from being able to help to with agitation for people with dementia and helping with focus and increasing rapport with their caregivers. It can do that for somebody on their dementia journey. At the same time, singing in itself can help restore speech after a traumatic brain injury or stroke. It's used in mental health all of the time. We'll get more into that in the science. But there's a big problem in that there's really only about 10,000 practicing music therapists in the U.S. as opposed to about 120,000 occupational therapists. And so what I did with my partner, Andy Tubman, my co-founder of my company, he is a music therapist. And what we did was digitize one music therapy practice called lyric cueing or lyric coaching. And what this means is the words of a song are actually spoken to you before you need to sing them. And so what that does is it enabled us to create an app out of that technology, out of that process, to get people singing in order to bring around therapeutic change. And the app itself can then be used because it utilizes smart algorithms based on best practices in music therapy. It enables all kinds of people, caregivers, speech therapists, nurses, grandchildren, to be able to facilitate a therapeutic music session on their own and help spread and get music as medicine mass distributed. And I would say, just to kind of finish that up, we have focused this primarily for the last decade on really helping older adults, especially those with dementia and their caregivers, live better, healthier, happier lives together.
Right. So is it, I'm just trying to, envision it. And I actually went on your website, and we'll let everybody know how to get to your website and all that. But and I found it interesting. But it's almost like if you were watching even a live concert, and the singer, the person up there is singing, but wants to let everybody know kind of the words that are coming up. You know what I mean? So quietly says the words, and then everybody sings. Is that kind of how it works, like that?
Yeah, well, we have actually three different kinds of solutions. And so a couple of them are app-based. And in those, you're really singing out of you can use it on your phone, on a tablet, and there's smart algorithms attached to it so that essentially, let's say you are working with somebody or you have a loved one who has dementia and is agitated. With SingFit, what we do is the app gives the facilitator verbal and written instructions on how to interact with the person in the app. But from the perspective of the person who they're working with, you are correct. What they end up hearing is they end up hearing a song, getting to choose whether or not they want to listen to that song. But then embedded in that song are actually the verbal prompts of the songs. And it is a very hard thing. We do usually show a video. So I really encourage people to go to our website, singfit.com, and take a look at some of our videos because it is a hard thing to imagine. But really what it allows for, the prompting mechanism, what it allows for, and we call it a lyric coach, what it allows for is even if somebody has dementia, even if they have visual problems or any other cognitive issues, it allows them to have this immersive singing experience. And so we use that app to create one-on-one experiences. We also have a version of it that is used for group experiences in long-term care, senior living facilities, skilled nursing facilities. And then what you're talking about is something we have that's only for our SingFit PRIME customers to have access to at the moment, which is called SingFit TV. And that was developed during COVID when many of our clients, we're now at over 900 senior living facilities and skilled nursing facilities across the country. At that point, we were probably at about 500 during the pandemic, and we started getting calls that a lot of places couldn't do groups at all, and they were like, well, what do you got? How can you help us? We're having trouble really keeping our residents happy and joyful and engaged. And so we created SingFit TV, which I think is what you saw, where it's actually a television show where there's a host, and we use that same prompting protocol in order to get people singing. But there's also trivia involved and all of these sorts of things. So yeah, COVID was, we had a sort of necessity as the mother of invention moment where we created SingFit TV for that.
Great. So there's a lot of science behind this, neurological, physical, emotional. I'm going to let you kind of give us that overview. I'm sure a lot of research has went into this before you launched. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, over the past 20, 30 years, the science behind music and singing has really expanded. And, the first thing that I'll say is what we talk about a lot is the difference between passive music listening and active music making. And a lot of solutions, especially those aimed at older adults, are focused on the passive music listening side. And there's some great applications for passive music listening. There's two main challenges with it. One is when you're passively listening to music, it only lights up certain parts of your brain. And in order for those parts of the brain to get lit up, you have to really, really understand exactly which song is going to do that for somebody. You really have to find their preferred music is an incredibly important aspect of that. So that's actually harder to scale than one might think. What we do is we focus on active music making. And when you are actively singing, and they've looked at this under fMRI, you can see virtually every part of the brain light up, like the vagus strip. And so it's motor centers, planning centers, everything that you need to do essentially with your brain. That part of the brain gets lit up when you sing, and so that creates this full brain neurological workout. And that can mean different things to different people, right? Some people can be doing it to attain even greater health, but for somebody with dementia, for example, or another cognitive impairment, it helps create new neural networks and get the brain stronger. And so, and it helps organize the brain in time too. And we all know that disorientation and sort of being in the collective present can be difficult for a lot of older people. So you get this full brain workout, but there's other amazing, sort of like kind of side effects, right? When you're singing, you are also releasing serotonin, oxytocin, you're optimizing your dopamine levels and your cortisol levels. And so these are all of the neurochemicals and neurotransmitters and hormones that are actually the happy ones, right? So and the calming ones. So being able to impact cortisol levels means you can help calm, help create a calmer state for somebody who's agitated or has anxiety. But the dopamine and the serotonin and all of this stuff for somebody who's low, right, that can be a pick-me-up. So it's all the same neurochemicals that we try to affect with things like antipsychotics and antidepressants and anti-anxiety drugs. And then I'll finish it off by saying, the obvious one too is when you're singing, especially, you're getting a respiratory workout. Right. And so in these days of post-COVID, when we started the company, we focused on its effects on chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but there's a lot of science and research about singing's effect on our ability to breathe well. And in those cases too, a lot of the exacerbations with things like COPD and dementia, they can come really from the anxiety around it. Being worried about taking your next breath, that can lead to hospital visits, right? All of these kinds of things. So to be able to have an effective tool to preempt sundowning or deal with anxiety that's not pharmacological, to me, that's really one of the best aspects of using singing as a therapeutic tool and music in general.
Great. I've heard, two different terms used that I'd love for you to maybe explain if there is a difference. I've heard the term music therapy. We hear that. Mm-hmm. I've also heard the term therapeutic music. So talk to us about both and the difference between those two.
Yeah, it's a great question. So music therapy, in order for something to officially be music therapy, it needs to be administered by a certified music therapist. And so to become a music therapist, you go to 4 years of college, you do a 6-month internship, you pass boards, there's all kinds of things that you need to go through to be a music therapist. And music therapists have many, many tools in their belt. So singing is a therapeutic tool, and using prompting, the lyric coaching system that we use might be one of those tools. And for example, when Congresswoman Gabriella Giffords, who many might remember, had a left hemisphere gunshot wound to the head, when she had that happen to her, she lost the ability to speak, because speech very often takes place in the left hemisphere of the brain. And so her music therapist and her speech therapist actually used the same technique of using singing, using the prompting system to get her singing to help rewire where speech takes place in her brain. And so that process is actually what Gabrielle Giffords herself, credits the restoration of her speech. The problem, and music therapists might have other, different kinds of things that they might employ. They might employ drumming, they might employ songwriting, they may employ visual imagery in music. There's all kinds of things that a music therapist can use. The challenge, as I referred to before, is that there's only 10,000 of them in the US. So there's just not nearly enough people around to facilitate it. You know, we have many music therapists working for us. If there's music therapists listening to the show, we're always hiring for music therapists. As I said, Andy, my co-founder, is a music therapist, many years experience. And so they can really handle a wide variety of cases. Therapeutic music is taking what we've learned from music therapy and applying it, you know, in a way that is specific and directed, and can be then facilitated by other people besides music therapists. And so we use music therapists to design our platforms and our apps and our programming, so that music therapy intelligence is built in to what we do, but then allows for sort of a greater distribution of those principles.
Great. Wonderful information. So Rachel, I promise only 30 seconds, going to do a quick break just to recognize our sponsor. Come back, we'll share with people how they could learn more about SingFit and talk about kind of the various, you know, uses of SingFit as well. Okay. So my question to all of you is, do you know anyone who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make the appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. So we're back with Rachel Francine, who you know, is a co-founder of SingFit, who they distribute music as medicine. I guess best way to explain it. Great information you've been sharing. So, you know, maybe before we get into the various uses, share with our listeners a little bit more about SingFit, how they can connect, how they could learn more.
Sure. So as always, there's they can go to singfit.com, and I would encourage people to go to our video section, watch our videos on the different solutions that we'll talk about later on what interests you. They can also get directly in touch with us just by emailing sing, S-I-N-G, @singfit.com. And of course, we are on all of the various Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn platforms, and recently actually started a new TikTok page.
So I just have a question for you on this. It's somewhat humorous maybe, but you know, as you know, I've been involved in assisted living and memory care for many years, and I've been into many communities and walked through many memory care locations as well throughout the country. And, you know, many times there's music playing, you know, Sinatra, Dean Martin, you know, a lot of that. I'm going, when's this going to, when it's my turn, when is this going to change? You know, I'm a Rolling Stone, Beatles, you know, rock guy. So what do you see happening? I mean, it's kind of humorous, but maybe not, you know, it's around the corner.
It is something we think about and work on every single day here. I think that because what you're talking about in particular is something that's referred to as the sticky years or the reminiscence bump. And what this means is that the music that is most embedded in our lives, that sort of sticks with us the longest, is music that we listen to between the ages of about 13 and 24. And so we use this to help us choose, to help us program our apps and to choose music and make it the most applicable right, to that person, to that recipient of the music as medicine. And you're right. I think a lot of a lot of people haven't moved those years in terms of the way they program music for older adults. We hear that all the time. And so, with SingFit, we've definitely now, we've always looked at the 60s, but we look at the 70s much harder now, and are into the 80s and, in the 80s and even approaching the 90s for the kind of music that we include, even in some of our solutions that are really meant for memory care or dementia, but especially, getting to, because we're in skilled nursing, we're in a lot of skilled nursing facilities, so the age range is much wider, and so we are expanding that range 100%.
I'm sure you've been thinking about it, but you got plenty of time for this. But some of the most recent music, I don't know how you're going to figure out the words, but that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. We yes, exactly. No, it's definitely. But one of the things that we do at SingFit is we are very careful about how we curate our songs. And so not every song has the structure and all of that stuff to be a SingFit song. You're exactly right, because you have to kind of insert them. So we have a whole process and a whole team that works on figuring out, which of 100 songs would make the right SingFit song. So we're very careful about that.
That's great. So let's talk about, the use of music and what you're doing relative to, self-care for that individual, relative to caregivers, relative to, senior living and healthcare communities and facilities. I'm sure there's uses across the board. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll have to finish up, but I'll let you take it away. All right.
Sounds great. Well, so our first solution that we had out there, it's been on the market for over eight years now, 10 years now. It's called SingFit PRIME, and that was very specifically designed for long-term care, for long-term care solutions, because we had the app, and as I said, it could be applied to a lot of different kinds of conditions. But where we found really the most acceptance around the idea that music is medicine, it was at long-term care with people who are working with folks with dementia. Almost anybody who's worked with somebody with dementia for any period of time has a story about how music has affected somebody that they worked with. So we created a group process for long-term care, and it's a turnkey solution where when a senior living community or skilled nursing center gets order SingFit, they get a box. And in that box, there's shakers, there's scarves, there's speakers, there's different things. And in addition, there's actually written playlists that are essentially a lesson guide for that facilitator. And those lesson guides could be something like a musical trip to the UK. And it gives the facilitator a word-by-word script that lets them say, hey, today, we're going to go on a musical trip to the UK. The first thing we're going to do is stop in Liverpool and sing some Beatles. And then there's different levels of Beatles trivia written into that. There's self-disclosure questions that are written around that, and really all with the eye of what would be the best practice in music therapy, because this kind of session, this journey session, is really the best practice for a group scenario in senior living. That it is done by music therapists. So we use that as a framework, but we allow in-house staff. There's an hour training where in-house staff learns how to facilitate this, so that you can use the SingFit PRIME as much as you want within the bounds of an activity schedule for a particular location. And some of the places that use SingFit PRIME, they may use it 3 times a week. Some of them use it 5 times a week. There's places where they'll use it twice a day, where they may, for a memory care unit, for example, they may use it in the morning, do an 8-song session to get people up and focused. And then they may also do it at 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon to help balance out those neurochemicals and cortisol before sundowning kicks in. So there's lots of ways that they use the group process. Before I go into the other two, I'll ask you, do you have any questions about that? Just to make sure that we're all on point?
Great. That's great.
Okay.
You did a great job in explaining. And I know people that are listening, they're going to want to go to your website, get more detail. I say you have a lot of great videos. So we'll, just to reiterate that again. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. So that's the videos. And then we also have, and this is a newer solution, and the overarching name for it is SingFit Studio. And I've really come to love the name Studio on it, because you can kind of think about it as a cross between a workout studio and a music studio, right? And what this means is we have two different solutions that sort of pop out of SingFit Studio. One is a professional version, and one is created for caregivers. And a lot of it is the same, but there's some key differences. And what this does is it gives the ability for somebody to facilitate a session with somebody with a variety of conditions, and eventually what SingFit Studio will be, I say for people who are Star Trek people, I call it a medical musical tricorder. For people who aren't Star Trek people, I call it a medical musical Swiss Army knife, because essentially with SingFit Studio, what you're able to do is go in and say who you are. Am I a speech therapist? Am I what I call a love economy caregiver, a husband, a wife, a son, a daughter? And then it'll ask about who you're working with, their condition. And so right now we still are focused on older adults with cognitive issues. So you would say, oh, they have, the diagnosis of dementia, the severity of that. And then it'll ask a few questions about that. So it'll ask their age for exactly those stickier reasons that we talked about earlier, where the music that most stays with us is that between 13 and 24. And it will ask for musical preferences if you know them, but it doesn't have to. And then once you're done with that intake, then every time you pull up the app, it'll ask you about the condition of the person that you're with today. What is the problem? And so if the problem is anxiety, then the app will start pulling, if you've done previous sessions, from their favorite music. But we also know a lot of data around these songs. So one of the things we know, for example, is what's the energetic level of the song? And if the person is very anxious, instead of playing like a ballad or a soothing song or something that, we think, might calm them down, the best practice in music therapy is to play something that actually matches their energetic level. So the app will give them suggestions, let them choose a song or not choose a song. We really try to, especially with dementia, make sure that we're giving people as much autonomy and choice as possible, because we know that's one of the things that's often taken away from people as they age. So they get to kind of help in making sure the song is right for them. And then, even though, so we'll start out, that session where the music that's being suggested is a high energy song, but eventually, we're taking a song that might be a 7 energetically, and then the next song is a 6 or a 5. And what that does is help to help ease the anxiety and match the mood and create a more a calmer state for that person. On the other side, if the problem is apathy, you'd start out with a slower song, and then you get more energetic as you go. And like I said, that's available in professional versions, which offer more profiles and different kind of statistics and other things like that. And then there's a version that's really meant for home use for low economy caregivers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And,
That's wonderful. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were going to finish?
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and just because we had mentioned SingFit TV in the opening, the SingFit TV solution that we use right now, we may have an announcement coming about that in a little bit, so people should check back every once in a while about how that's available. But for right now, that's available to our SingFit PRIME customers only. So if you get SingFit PRIME, you also get SingFit TV.
Got it. So just bottom line, a lot of information, but if it's an individual caregiver, somebody taking care of a spouse or a parent, you have that available for them, and all the way up to a larger community that has a number of people. You kind of cover it all. Am I correct?
We do, and also, home care and rehab and really just reaching people where they are. And so individuals who are interested in downloading SingFit Caregiver for their families can go to our website and download it directly from there, either for Android or for iOS, Apple devices. But yeah, we are very focused. We spent over 10 years in the older adult space, and that's where our focus is. But really, gearing up for the boomers, getting music in there for the boomers as well, and making sure that
I look forward to
covered.
that. I look forward to that. All right, great. Rachel Francine, singfit.com. Check it out. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it too.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Please be safe out there. We'll talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.